last, before I went to another Grand Prix. This time I had driven my new Ferrari 365 down to Monza, a place which after so many visits had taken the place of Goodwood in my heart. But it was with a heavy heart that I remembered the tragedies of the 1970 season. Poor old Bruce McLaren had been killed in June whilst testing one of his Can-Am cars at Goodwood, and then within days, Pierre's courage perished when his De Tomaso caught fire in the Dutch Grand Prix. These tragedies tarnished a season which otherwise was turning out to be highly competitive. 5 drivers and 5 teams had won races. Brabham, Stewart in his Matra, Rindt, Lotus, Rodriguez, BRM, and Ickx, Ferrari. Then with the advent of a new Lotus 72, Rindt had started to dominate, winning 4 races in succession and building up a dominant position in the title table. Ferrari were running the flat 12 312Bs, and fresh from Ickx's win at the Österreich Ring, fielded 3 cars at Monza. Number 2 for the Belgian Ickx himself, number 4 for the rising Swiss star, Clay Regazzoni, who lives not far away in Lugano, and number 6 for the well-to-do Roman sports car driver, Ignazio Giunti. As usual, Enzo Ferrari made his annual appearance at a Grand Prix, Monza practice. Unlike lesser mortals, the Italian Carabinieri didn't dream of asking the Commendatore to give up his seat on the Armco. Although he still didn't have a top-line Italian driver to conduct his beloved cars, he had relented somewhat over his attitude of 3 years ago, when he'd proclaimed that there was no Italian driver worthy of his team. The sports car driver Giunti had won for Ferrari at the Sebring 12 hours, the Targa Florio, and the Ran 9 hours, so he'd been invited into the Grand Prix team, at least for a one-off drive. This was at Spa, where he'd surprised many by finishing 4th. This result earned him 3 more drives, of which Monza would be the last. The Ferraris were quickest in both Friday sessions, with Ickx setting fastest time, 3/10ths quicker than teammate Regazzoni, who had shown great promise again by finishing 2nd to Ickx at the previous race in Austria. Ken Tyrrell is now developing his own Formula One chassis, but for the time being his drivers, the world champion Jackie Stewart and Jean-Pierre Beltoise's brother-in-law François Sévère, are using March 701 Cosworths. Stewart tried the new Tyrrell at Monza, but was faster in the March, setting 2nd quickest time on the Friday. The Gold Leaf Team Lotus 72s were in the hands of Jochen Rindt, John Miles, the new boy Emerson Fittipaldi, and Graham Hill was in Rob Walker's Brook Bond-sponsored car. Fittipaldi crashed in the first session at South Curve, and his car was irreparable. Works marches in STP colours were entered for Chris Amon and Joe Siffert. Colin Crabb's Antique Automobiles concern had entered another march for the new Swedish find from Formula 3, Ronnie Peterson. Brabham had car number 44 for Black Jack himself, and 46 for the bespectacled German Rolf Stommelen. The French Matra team relied exclusively on French drivers, Jean-Pierre Beltoise and the bearded Henri Pescarolo. This time, BRM finally has a car which is competitive, the Yardley-backed P153, and their quickest driver was Pedro Rodriguez. The Mexican, winner of this year's Belgian Grand Prix, was backed up by Jackie Oliver and the Canadian George Eaton, who was paying for his drive. Denny Hume led the dispirited three-car McLaren team, aided by Peter Gethin and Andrea Diadimic, who had only managed to finish one race since joining the team at the beginning of the year. John Surtees had a Singleton Surtees TS7, which he would drive. His only points of the season had come earlier at the wheel of a McLaren, but after a lot of detail revision, he now had high hopes of success with his own car. Saturday, September the 5th, 1970, was one of the most tragic days I can remember in 20 years of following motor racing. As the final practice session got underway, Jochen Rindt was killed instantly when his Lotus 72 veered sharply to the left and hit the barrier at South Curve. Jochen's stardom will forever be remembered, as he was to become the sport's first posthumous world champion. His accident left no one in the mood for any further serious qualifying. Team Lotus, now having lost 2 cars, withdrew the remaining 72 of John Miles, and the Rob Walker team also decided not to compete. With Lotus out, and with all 3 Ferraris amongst the first 6 cars on the grid, the Tifosi's hopes ran high for the race. Sharing the front row with X was Rodriguez's BRM. Jackie Stewart lined up alongside Regazzoni on the second row, and Oliver in the second BRM had Giunti to partner him on the third. X got a flying start, with Rodriguez delayed momentarily with wheel spin. From then the fight was on. As they came past at the end of lap 1, the order was X, Rodriguez, Stewart, Regazzoni, Giunti, and Oliver. There then followed a typical, sensational Monza race, with the leading quartet taking it in turns to lead the race. In all, there were 28 lead changes. But races run with such fury always produce mechanical casualties. First to go was Rodriguez with a blown engine, as Oliver took the lead in the other BRM. Then Ferrari hit trouble, Giunti's engine blew, and on lap 26, X retired his clutchless 312. But the Scuderia still had Rega, who led at half distance. There were still only 5 seconds covering the first 6 cars: Regazzoni, Stewart, Oliver, Hume, Stommelen, and Beltwise. Stewart got ahead on lap 50, only for Regazzoni to retake the lead 3 laps later. In the end, it was Regazzoni who took the flag, 6 seconds clear of Stewart. The Ferrari fans went wild and invaded the track. And why not? Ferrari had won on home ground, Regazzoni was very nearly Italian, and he'd taken his first Grand Prix win.